I'm really excited. I've been excited since 6 a.m. I mean, hyper the whole day. And it was 1 p.m. and I was exhausted already. I'm in my second week and ready to go. Las que hablan español, ¿dónde están? Bienvenidas. De verdad que es un gusto siempre verlas en los eventos que son para toda la iglesia. Como les comenté, esta plática va a estar en inglés. Ustedes les dimos los handouts en español. Si a alguien le faltan los handouts en español, ¿todos lo tienen? Ok, perfecto. This is just for English. If you don't understand it, it's fine. It's not for you. They have the handouts in Spanish. That's all I'm telling them. So, va a ser en inglés, pero vamos a entender primero Dios, ¿verdad? All right, back to English. This topic on purpose and calling is one of my favorite topics. I'm very, very passionate about this. And it really is my prayer, there we go, that as I share with you, that God will take my words and translate them into something that is really meaningful to each one of you, something that's personal, something that is unique to your own calling, to your own season in life, to your own set of circumstances. Is it me or is it going up and down? It's just me. It's probably this thing, right? I just hear myself like here. So yeah, I pray that I've been praying a lot. I prayed for each one of you. I was praying over each chair, and it was just different things. As I went, it was like the Spirit was just giving me different specific things for each one of you. Like reveal yourself to them, speak to them, speak to this woman as come to the Bible. And it was beautiful. So this morning, the Spirit was already present. And anyway, I say that I really pray that God translates what I say, because to talk about calling is not an easy task. It's actually very difficult, because calling is one of those topics in Christianity that has changed so much over time. It's one of those things that, depending on politics and government and economics and whatever was going on in a particular year, people understood their calling in a different way. And so I thought it would be neat to begin this conversation just giving you a tiny summary of how the definition of calling has evolved. And it's going to be very, very short. It's going to be ridiculously short, a church history class that I'm calling History of Calling in a Nutshell. Isn't that right? So if we look at church history, or at least white church history or European church history, we can divide it into big chunks, right? And so we have early Christianity, because the first years of the Common Era, where Christians were just a minority, tiny, tiny minority. And so for them, what the highest calling meant was to be willing to defend their faith, even to the point of death, to bear witness to their faith. And this is what we have in times of the first martyrs, which the word martyr in Greek, it just means witness, right? Being willing to die for your faith if that was necessary. And so that went on for a couple hundred years until roughly the 400s, when the Emperor Constantine, he was a Christian himself, and he decided that Christianity was going to be the official religion of the entire Roman Empire. So all of a sudden, overnight, there was a big change. One day you were sought after for being a Christian, the next day you were actually expected to be a Christian. So everything changed, and so people began to think, all right, before I would, fight and defend myself and bear witness, and now it's so common that I wonder if this is what God is calling us to do. And so some people began to retreat, to go to the outskirts, to the margins of the cities, to try to live ascetic lives, which really means to pray as much as they can, to fast, to fight the passions. And this is the time when monasteries began to exist, right? So people went from seeing martyrs are like the poster child for Christianity to monks and hermits. And so everything was going fine, but then some people began to think, really? Is that what God is calling me to do? To just leave everything and go live in a cave? So people started to work a little bit more in the church. And so this is when the idea of vocation, vocatio, began to emerge, and they began to shape it around church life. And so if you were a priest, if you were a bishop, if you were someone that was looking after the poor, working through a church, that was a Christian calling. And then, well, that was during the Christian Empire. But then, moving forward to the 1500s, we just covered like 1500 years of history. Isn't that great? Moving forward to the Protestant Reformation, and then here we have the revolutionary ideas of Martin Luther and John Calvin and all these theologians that really began to stress the priesthood of all believers. Right? So they expanded the notion of Christianity, and so you could do anything, and as long as you were doing it for the glory of God, that was your calling. I don't know if you remember a famous saying, a famous line by Martin Luther that he said, "You can milk a cow for the glory of God," which meant anything you do. And then in modern times, we're just complicated people. And especially now with postmodernity and everything is relative, it's about perspective, it depends on how you look at it, and trying to come up with definitions, it's been hard, and especially with what's been going on in the last couple of decades, where Christianity has been growing so quickly in what's called the Global South. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the Global South is really Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Right? So that's where Christianity is really growing. And so imagine all these people with mindsets that are so different to what historical European Anglo-white mindset are. So now they are trying to come up with understandings that are so different. Imagine a Chinese person trying to understand what following God means, and then you have an African person or a Latin American or a crazy Mexican trying to, come up with something. And so it's difficult. And so many churches today, and even some of us, trying to describe something, what it means for you to be a Christian, instead of thinking of a positive definition, what we end up doing is just giving a list of things we should not do. Right? Don't drink, don't smoke, don't miss church, don't sleep around. And we think that that's calling, and that is such a negative way to present it. And I almost didn't want to give you a definition because of how difficult it is. I almost didn't want to give you a definition today. When you try to define something, when there's something out there that you cannot comprehend, when you start to define it, what do? You start to put boundaries around it. You start to contain it. You start to put it in a box so that you can control it, right? And the last thing we want to do is to put boundaries around what God wants to do in our lives. But even with that, I will give you a definition, and here is why. Because definitions do help us. As long as we don't see definitions as definite, they're helpful. And also, because if I end up doing a terrible job at presenting this topic, you can at least take a definition home. And I'm going to read it for you. It's by a guy called Os Guinness. He says that calling is the truth that God calls us to himself so decisively that everything we are, everything we do, and everything we have is invested with special devotion and dynamism lived out as a response to his summons and service. It's a little bit long, but it has key things that I really want to stress. And the first one is how this begins. It says, calling is a truth, right? And if we can only find truth in God, if God is truth, that means that we cannot seek our calling apart from God, right? It is the truth, and truth is eternal. And the rest of the definition, really what it's saying, what it's stressing, is our response to that calling. So if you have had in the past an idea of calling as just something that God says or demands or expects, you're falling short. Because calling implies, God's calling and your response to it. It's a teamwork. And it is in that process of communicating with God and trying to discern what he's trying to tell us that everything gets messy. It gets really messy because there's no formulas for that. Zero, not one. And I'm going to be talking about truths today. I'm not going to give you answers for anything. If you were expecting to get some kind of answers today, I am so sorry to disappoint you. I'm about to burst your bubble right now. You're not. But hopefully there's going to be key themes that will be helpful for you. Because it really is a lifetime process. Discerning our call, it takes our entire life, but we gotta be moving. And so I said, life is a journey, life is a race. It's a theme that's very, very common in the Bible, especially with the writings of Paul. And I want to read a passage where Paul talks about life as a race, and that talks a lot, it says a lot about how we ought to understand our calling. And that comes in 1 Corinthians 9, 24 and 27, 24 through 27. And it says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air, but I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified. And again, this idea of life as a race is pervasive throughout the Bible. The idea of us being athletes or soldiers, Paul uses a lot of interesting imagery and metaphor to get us thinking about our calling. And what's interesting about life as a race and what Paul is really trying to do, he's not trying to get us to think about the race itself. He's using the race as an excuse to point us in the direction of all those things that are connected to the race, but are not the race itself, like discipline, like self-control, like obedience, box in such a way as not without aim. He's talking about having goals, discipline yourself, training yourself. Those are the things he's really stressing here. But those are the things that we don't want to hear about. We just don't want to hear about those things because we just want the fun part of it, the victory of the race, right? I don't know if you close your eyes and try to, I better open them or I'll fall. If you close your eyes and imagine your life as a race, trying to follow everything that Paul is saying, I'm almost positive that a lot of you are going to imagine yourself just actually running the race and just going like that. Like that lady that's about to come? Yeah. Right? The race, the winning part, the victory. We want to be winners. If some of you know what you've been called to do, if you're a preacher and if someone asks you to think about your calling, you imagine yourself preaching. If you're a worship pastor or a worship leader and you're thinking about your calling, what you're supposed to do, you imagine yourself singing. If you're a dancer, you imagine yourself dancing. If you think you're called to do missions, you imagine yourself traveling, evangelizing, doing things, building houses, right? And then the problem with that, there's a big problem with that image, is that when my microphone is falling, I can feel it. Stuck. All right, should be good. If it falls, I'll just scream. The image of this lady, of this athlete, is dangerous. It's a dangerous one. You know why? Because those moments are just instants in our lives. Only instants. And so it's dangerous because when we think of our calling that way, we miss out on so many things. We stop paying attention to the work that has to be done behind the stage, right? Backstage. The discipline, the training, the enduring, the fighting hard, the going after something so badly that it doesn't matter if it feels like it's taking forever for you to get there. It is during training time that your calling really begins to take shape. Offline. When I was in seminary, one of my professors was preaching one time and he said something really interesting, really wonderful, that it really touched me. He said, you know, most people want the glory, but not the story. And I said, oh, that's catchy, and it's profound. That kind of describes who I am. I just want the glory, but not the story. right? And another danger of thinking of our calling as something just glorious is that when you, like for me, I love speaking in front of people. You have no idea how much. I love doing this. I wish I was speaking for 5 hours tonight. But I would do that to you. If I were to think of my calling as these moments, I don't know when's the next time I'm going to talk. It might be in a couple of months. There's the danger of me thinking that I'm just going to waste my time. I'm going to be nothing. I'm going to be worthless. So the next time I'm in actually, I'm in that high moment. And when you expect everything to be a high moment, then you become addicted. It's like a drug. And they're just trying to go from high to high. And we miss out on the whole point. God, I'm going to tell you something else about life as a race. God is not as interested in the kind of race you're going to run as much as He's interested in the kind of athlete you become. That's very different. That's when the spotlight changes from race to you. How are you training for this race? What kind of person are you becoming? Because God calls us to be before He calls us to do anything. And we're all really running a race, whether we acknowledge it or not. Some of you may think you're running 15 races. Some of you may be thinking, I'm not really running anything. I'm just paralyzed. I'm not going anywhere. And I want you to grab your handouts. I don't know what you thought about them when you saw them. You probably thought it was funny. In those handouts, I have stick figures. And in these stick figures, each one of them resemble a different attitude or a different way in which some of us run the race. And the first one, at the end, I'm going to ask you to draw your own stick figure. We're going to get super creative. But before I want to describe the first ones, to kind of give you some hints if you could be one of them. So the first one, you see a guy that's just looking down, and he just looks hopeless, right? He's feeling down, or she. Maybe you're running your race in such a way that you have no expectations whatsoever. Maybe you don't believe that God truly has a plan for you. Maybe you don't think that there's something exciting for you, a mission. Others may be living your life just jumping around, just going here and there, left and right, and really just going wherever the wind takes you. And you're just a bit clueless, right? Or maybe you are confused and you have a bunch of questions. Like, what am I supposed to do again? Am I really supposed to start doing this ministry? Am I supposed to join this group, this team? And so you may have so many questions that you are actually paralyzed. And you're like that little dude sitting down. And you're doing nothing. You're just being a spectator of others. While others are doing life, you're just looking at them. Or maybe you're sleepwalking. Maybe you're just going through the motions. Just doing the next thing that you think you have to do, the next errand, the next thing that keeps you busy. Or maybe you are actually running, and you're running in great. So we are going to take some time right now, I'm going to give you 2-3 minutes for you to take time and try to draw your own stick figure. How do you think you're running your race, right? And then we'll keep going, but take some time. Don't mind me, I'm going to fix my mic, and then I'll be right back, right?
I turned it off.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Good, yeah.
I forgot about that.
I haven't heard her talk about
Just in case she does. She doesn't want it. She says, I heard it cutting off, but she's going to work with it. She wants to use it. So.
Doing sit-ups. Yeah, like
Did you just make sure it's plugged in?
not anymore. I took too long.
Right. Fixed. It is fixed. So, did you just to give us a draw your stick figure? Was it an interesting exercise? Was it good? Okay, so I have a second question for you. And the second question is, why do you think you are running your race like that? Yeah, it keeps getting more interesting and more interesting. Why do you think you're running it like that? And I'm going to give you I'm going to brainstorm here for you. I just want to help you out. Maybe you're running your race like that because of fear. Maybe right before you're about to start anything, fear takes over. Maybe you are just confused. And really, you want a sign that is so clear that there is no doubt. That's what God wants you to do. But then maybe you're forgetting that this Christian thing is about trusting. Just leaving it there for you. Maybe you're just lazy. Oh, maybe. You want to do it so badly, but that bed is so comfortable. You just want to stay a little longer there. Maybe you're super, super busy. Maybe you're just distracted. Maybe your self-esteem is not in a good place. Maybe you're distant from God. So distant that it is so hard to hear anything, so hard to trust that He has something for you. There might be more reasons, and I want to focus here for a little bit, because these are the things that really keep us from walking out our calling, from walking into our destiny, from even listening to God. We want to buy books that talk about calling, or come to conferences that talk about calling, because we want someone just to tell us the good things, the good news. But we need to focus on the things that keep us from getting there, from even understanding. We think that maybe you're too busy being a mom, and you know that being a mom is like one of the most honorable things we can do as women, right? One of the highest callings. I'm not even a mom, and I get that. But then sometimes there's God knocking on your shoulder, asking you to do that tiny little thing you can do while you hang out with other moms, and maybe you're not doing it, right? Maybe you're working 2 jobs, or 3 jobs, or 4 jobs, and it's hard. And it's not like you're doing something wrong. You just don't have time. Maybe you're expecting a prophet to come prophesy over you, and that's great. I'm not going to be prophesying tonight. We think that it's so many things outside of us that keep us from understanding or being brave enough to walk into our calling, and we forget that we are our biggest obstacles. So stop blaming it on anything, on your spouse, on your business, on anything else. We need to focus on ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a way that's going to help us de-center, right, our attention. Because we don't like to talk about ourselves. We shouldn't be all about ourselves. And then we forget to pay attention to our fears and all those things that are just always creeping up. Because here's the fact when it comes to calling. Most people give up before they even begin. Some people just live their lives and not once did they even wonder, why on earth were they created? Where do you think we find the largest repository of dreams? Where do you think you can find just the biggest amount of ideas, of dreams, of hopes, of possibilities? Think of it as a think tank, right? There's companies that hire people to just think. You have computers and then you contain a lot of information. Where in the world do you think you can find the largest amount of dreams? I've asked this question before and someone said in children's minds, and I thought, whew, that's a good answer. But I think mine's better. Do you know where? No. In the cemetery. In the cemetery. Just imagine the amount of dreams that get buried because whoever dreamt them did not have the time, the guts, the trust, you name it, the energy to go after them and make them come true. It is in the cemetery. And I have a nice quote from a guy called Les Brown that I want to read to you. And he says, "The graveyard is the richest place on earth because it is here that you will find all the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take the first step, keep with the problem, or determined to carry out their dream." Yeah. When I read this, it really hit home with me because I was this close to ending up like that. I was so close to dying. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I still have so many dreams. So many things I want to do around the world. So many adventures I want to do and start and share with other people. And I am dying. And I knew I had days left. And I remember thinking, why didn't I do more when I could? Why didn't I say yes to that opportunity to do something? Why was I so concerned about what people were thinking? Why was I concerned with what people expected me to do? Why was I lazy? When my legs worked, why did I not take them places? They don't work now. I can only go places in my mind. And all of us do that. We can go places in our minds, but are we actually going there? Are we taking our legs there? Our hearts there? So when I was in that hospital bed, there was a turning point for me. Realizing that I could just get buried with all my dreams and hopes. And so that turning point for me was encountering God, was getting to know Jesus. And understanding that maybe there was a reason why I was here. Maybe there was a reason why I was still here after everything I went through. And so I hope that as we, continue to talk, that we change our paradigm in our minds and that we have this turning point. Because my goal really tonight is to help you change the chains that keep us down for roots that make us grow. Right? Something is always pulling us down. Something is always getting our attention. Always. There's always a voice speaking into our lives. Always. What is it? What are the things keeping you down, keeping you grounded so that you can't move? So we could have chains that don't allow us to move, and those chains are the things I just named before: fear, hopelessness, laziness. You're just devastated about something, and those are chains that don't let you move, and they're heavy. How can we change them for roots that will make you grow? and stand like a tree by a river. How do we change that? How do we even begin? And that's an inward process. And it's a process in which the more we get to know God, the more we get to know who He is, the more He will reveal to us. Because if we are created in His image, our calling really is to become like Him. That's our calling. And how do we become like Him? Doing what He called us to do. To love Him and love others and preach the good news and extend His kingdom. That's our calling. It's the same for all of us. But we get too complicated. Now, the way we work it out, it's different for each one of us because we have different gifts. Some of you may do it through singing. Some of you may do it through teaching, through being hospitable, through all the things you can do. But it's really a work inward. And it's where you're getting to know God and getting to know self. You will discover more of who He is and who He is in you. It's not trying to do things outside. Sometimes we want to grow, right? And we're going to get places, and the things we want to do is to get another diploma, or get another master's degree, or I'm going to learn another language so that I can be a missionary, or I'm going to do something so that I can grow. And we grow in things, and we want to grow here, and we don't want to grow here, but we want to grow in so many different areas. And actually, if we think about it, the one that makes us grow is God. God is the one that grows the best in us. We are called to plant seeds. We're not called to grow things. He does it for us. That's the miracle of what He does. And so if we want to grow, if we want to embrace this theme of growing, we might as well get concerned about all the things that are growing inside of us that should not be growing in us. And we need to uproot them. How do we uproot all those things that get in the way? I have good news for you. You don't have to do it alone. We never do anything alone. Paul said, I am convinced that God, who began this good work in you, will carry it through to completion on the day of Jesus Christ. God began this good work in you. That means it starts with Him. It does not start with us. He'll bring it, He'll carry it through to completion. That means it ends with Him. We just came full circle, and we were not even in the picture. It begins with Him, it ends with Him. If whenever you think about your calling, you get nervous about it, you're looking in the wrong direction. You're too self-centered. If whenever you think about your calling, you think of what would make you happy, you're looking in the wrong direction. You're too self-centered. Because calling, your own personal, unique calling, is not about you. It sounds so, it's not you, it's me. It's like God is saying that to us. It's not you, it's me. Pay attention. We're too self-centered, and we forget that really God created us for such a time as this. You were not born 200 years ago or 1,000 years ago. You were not born in the year 3000. You were born now. And there's a reason for that, because there are needs now that only you can do something about it. It's about someone else when it comes to your calling. Our calling, it really is God's invitation for us to partner up in the work of expanding His kingdom. Last week I was meeting with a good friend who was here. Her name is Tanya. And we were talking about this, and she gave me this quote that is just going to stay with me forever. And she heard it from her dad's friend, something like that. I was like, tell me who said it. I can't claim it. I wish I could claim it, but I can't. And we were talking, and she said, you know, when we talk about calling, our responsibility really is our response to His ability. Isn't that good? Our responsibility should be our response to His ability. That's a good one. I'll let it sit for a minute. when it comes to our calling, we cannot do anything. We cannot even start dreaming about it if we're not coming to God first. And God is so gracious and so wonderful and so powerful and almighty that if you don't want to start doing anything, He'll find someone else to do it. And our callings are not that specific because our God can do anything through anyone. Anything through anyone. And the only thing He needs is a willing heart. The only thing He needs is a willing heart, not years of experience, not in the Bible from back to back. That's me. I've studied the Bible, but I've not quoted everything. I've been a Christian for 5 years. And He was that big, that He gave me a chance to be a pastor. So moving on to some basic truths that I want to give you about calling. The first one is, the idea of calling, if we talk about calling, that implies that there is actually a caller, right? If there's a calling, there's a caller, there's a callee, and there's a message. That's a calling. Basics of communication. Who is the caller in your life? It's evident that we know it's God, but who is the caller in your life? To whom belongs the loudest voice, the loudest and most influential voice in your life? To God, to your spouse, to your mom, to your friend, to that person you don't even know, but you know he or she doesn't like you, and their voice is the loudest in your life. God is the caller. And God is the caller that is always calling. Always calling, always communicating, always whispering in our ears. But are we listening? That's the problem. In Job 33:14, it says, "For God speaks in one way and in two, though people do not perceive it." So the problem is not if He's calling or not, because He is. How attentive our ears are. Our ears are. That sounds so hard. Now the second one, if God is the caller, we cannot know our calling apart from God. And these sound so basic. They sound so basic, but we somehow miss them. If God is the caller, we cannot know our calling apart from Him. Because you know what? You may not know your calling, and that's fine, because none of us are born knowing our calling. But our trust is that He knows. He does know. So at least someone knows, and thank God is the one that actually calls. "For I know the plans I have for you," He said to Jeremiah. You don't need to know them. It's okay. You don't need to freak out. You don't need to be too concerned. You don't need to be trembling, because I know, and I will carry it through. It's okay not to know, because unless God spoke clearly into your ear, you can just imagine your race as a scavenger hunt. And it's okay. In a scavenger hunt, what do? You get a little instruction or a little hint, and you just go nuts to try to find it. You actually get energized by that. How many of us do we... Thank you so much. I super need that. How many of us get that excited about that hint that God gave us in that sermon when we were listening and He said something to us? How many of us leave church and go, all right, I'm going to go after that because I can't wait to hear the next hint? Good for you. One. Yes. But that's how it works with Him. It's always on the move that He speaks to us. As a businesswoman that I am, you know, when you plan a new thing, a new project, the first thing you do is you draft a business plan. And in that business plan, you have a set of instructions, a set of steps that you need to follow. And you know that you better go in that order. Otherwise, you're going to mess up big time. You better know what the mission is and what the goals are and what kind of product you're going to make before you hire the person to do it, right? But in our lives, we kind of skip them. We have the first instruction, and it just doesn't sound very good, so we want the next one. Go back. Go back to the last instruction that God gave you. Go back to it and start moving. Because it's as you move that God is going to direct your steps and make your path straight. That's what we have in Proverbs 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. That talks about movement. As you move. And don't be afraid. You can start in any direction. It's okay. As long as you're trusting Him, you can start in any direction. Because you know what He's going to do? You can start moving this way. You're supposed to go that way. But you can start moving this way. And maybe you're about to, bump into something. And God is going to find a way to direct your path, to your steps, and make your path straight. But we need to move. It is always in our moving that we get direction. And so to end this, I really want to encourage you to not think about the race, winning that race, because you're going to win it the day you face the Lord. I want to encourage you not to think about how glorious it could be or the things that could make me happy. I really want to invite you to go offline. Because the most important part of your calling happens offline, when no one's watching. It happens before you get that job offer or promotion. It happens before you get that thing you think you're supposed to do. Otherwise, you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be ready. And so in your handout, there's a set of questions that I have in the back of them. And we're going to do something with them now, but I want to encourage you to take those home and take some time to go offline and spend some time with God and ask yourself questions. You thought you were going to have answers? No, you're going to go home with more questions. That's the best way to do it. And then eventually, we're going to, in like 3 weeks, we're going to have a follow-up conversation. And we're going to talk about the things that you think God spoke to you. And I'll speak a little bit more on spiritual gifts. And we do more things with it. But we need to take it slow, one day at a time, and ask ourselves the tough questions. Is that a fair thing to ask? To give you homework? All right, so I want to pray before we move on. Because God spoke today to some of us, or to all of us. And I really want to commit this time to Him and ask Him to speak loudly. So God, I thank you for your knowledge. I thank you for your truth. I thank you for creating each one of these women for big things. I want to pray that as they go home and they come to you and they ask questions, I pray that you speak to them. Speak to them clearly and loudly. I want to pray that they see today as a new day, as a turning point in their lives. The day that all of us actually get to see the hope, get to feel the hope that there is something for each one of us, God. That none of us are supposed to just sit or attend church or just go to one more Bible study. God, I want to pray that your Spirit ignites their hearts. I want to pray that your Spirit burns their hearts and that you fill us with this energy and this desire to get to know you more, to get closer with you, to get more intimate with you, so that we can discover more of who you are and who you are in us. So be with us, God. We need you. We want to hear from you.
stay, and I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel something again. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. And I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave, oh, never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, and I could hold on, I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave, oh, never let these walls down. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. I will be yours, oh,